Ever wonder how we actually, know things about how people think and behave?
Mm.
You're about to find out.
Okay.
Today's deep dive is all about research methods in applied psychology. We've got excerpts from a textbook, discussions about working with real people, and even a glimpse into how AI is shaking things up.
It's a bit like going behind the curtain to see how the magic trick is done.
Yeah.
Except in this case, it's not magic, it's science.
Mm.
And the discoveries have real impact on our lives.
Exactly. We're talking about stuff that affects everything from workplaces to schools to healthcare.
Right.
Speaking of which, one thing that really caught my eye is this idea of co-designed research. Imagine being more than just a subject in a study, but actually working with the researchers to figure out what questions to ask and how to use the findings.
It's a really interesting shift in how research is being approached. It's about creating more equitable partnerships where the people whose lives are being studied have a say in the process. And it connects to the history of action research, which has been around for decades. This method emphasizes real-world impact, not just publishing academic papers.
So it's like instead of researchers swooping in, doing their thing, and leaving, they're actually collaborating with communities to address issues that matter to those communities.
Precisely. This approach recognizes that the people closest to the problem often have valuable insights into potential solutions.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's a good reminder that research is ultimately about people.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of this hilarious anecdote in one of our sources about a researcher who got curious about what their dog did all day while they were at work.
That sounds amusing.
It is, but it also cleverly highlights how observation plays a role in research. It got me thinking about all the ways researchers gather data and the decisions they have to make in the process.
And one of the biggest decisions researchers face is how to choose who participates in their studies.
Okay.
This is where sampling comes in.
So sampling,
Yeah.
I'll admit, not the most thrilling word, right?
Right.
But here's why it should matter to you.
Okay.
Imagine reading a headline like, "New study shows 80% of people hate Mondays." Sounds dramatic, right?
Yeah.
But what if that study only asked people leaving a Nickelback concert on a Monday night? See the problem.
Exactly. A bad sample can completely skew the results,
Right.
making the findings meaningless
Yeah.
or even misleading.
Whoa.
Our sources break down different sampling methods,
Okay.
and one of the most important is probability sampling.
Okay, big words alert. What's probability sampling all about?
In simple terms, it's like drawing names out of a hat, but way more sophisticated.
Okay.
The goal is to make sure everyone in the population you're interested in has a fair chance of being selected. That way your sample is more likely to represent the larger group accurately.
So instead of just asking your Nickelback-loving friends, you'd want to find a way to include people who love jazz, death metal, and everything in between.
Precisely. And to make that sample even stronger, researchers often use a technique called stratified sampling.
Okay.
Imagine you're trying to understand the music preferences of everyone in the country.
Okay.
You could divide the population into age groups, say 20, 30-year-olds, 30, 40-year-olds, and so on.
Right.
Then you randomly select people from each age group.
So you're making sure each generation's voice is heard and not just letting the Gen Zers drown everyone else out with their love of hyperpop.
Exactly. This helps paint a more accurate and nuanced picture of music preferences across the entire population.
It's fascinating how much thought goes into getting a good sample.
Yeah.
It's not just about grabbing whoever's available.
Right.
And speaking of grabbing, what about all those online surveys we see? How do those work in terms of sampling?
That's a great question. And it's where things get even more complex. Our sources point out that while online surveys are convenient and often cost-effective, they can also be tricky when it comes to getting a truly representative sample.
Because not everyone has equal access to the internet, for starters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even among those who do have access, people who choose to participate in online surveys might have different characteristics than those who don't. Think about it.
Okay.
Are you more likely to answer a survey if you feel really strongly about the topic, either positively or negatively?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I know I've been guilty of that myself.
It's something researchers have to consider carefully when interpreting the results of online surveys, especially when those surveys are used to make claims about entire populations.
So the next time I see one of those pop-up polls asking for my opinion on the best ice cream flavor, I'll definitely think twice before hitting that submit button.
Right.
Okay, so we've gathered our data. Now how do we make sense of it all? Time for data analysis.
Right.
I used to think this was all about complex formulas and spreadsheets.
Yeah?
But our sources really highlighted the human side of it.
Yeah.
It's about finding the story hidden in the data.
It's like piecing together a puzzle.
Okay.
Each data point is a piece, and when you put them together in the right way,
Mhm.
you start to see the bigger picture.
And there are so many different ways to approach that puzzle, right?
Right.
Like our sources mention systematic reviews. Those sound
They
intense.
can be.
Yeah.
Imagine reading every book ever written about, say, the benefits of mindfulness.
Yeah.
That's kind of what a systematic review is like, but for research studies. Researchers analyze all the available evidence on a particular topic to get a comprehensive understanding. It's like getting the SparkNotes version of an entire field of research, but way more reliable.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Instead of just relying on one study, you're looking at the big picture. What about archival data analysis? That sounds like something out of Indiana Jones.
You can feel a bit like that. Researchers delve into existing data sets like old census records, company archives, or even past research studies to uncover new insights. It's a bit like being a historical detective looking for clues in the past to understand the present.
So cool. It's like that saying, the past is prologue. And then there's qualitative research, which focuses on people's experiences and perspectives.
Qualitative research dives into the why behind the numbers. It's about understanding the richness of human experience through interviews, observations, and analyzing texts.
It seems like each of these methods offers a unique lens to view and understand data.
Absolutely. And sometimes the most powerful insights come from combining different approaches. It's about using the right tool for the job, or even multiple tools to get the most complete picture possible.
Speaking of tools, one of the sources mentioned something called Mahalanobis's distance. It sounds super technical, but it's apparently a key statistical concept.
It might sound intimidating, but it's actually quite intuitive.
Okay.
Imagine a graph with dots scattered around, kind of like a connect the dots puzzle. Most of the dots are clustered together, but then there's that one dot way off by itself in the corner. Mahalanobis's distance helps us identify those outlier dots, the ones that are unusual or different from the rest.
Okay, that makes it much easier to visualize. So
Yeah.
it's like a way of spotting the oddballs, the data points that might be telling us something particularly interesting.
Exactly. They could be anomalies, or they could hold the key to a whole new understanding of the phenomenon we're studying.
And that brings us back to our friend AI. One of the sources talked about how AI is being used for literature reviews.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
That seems like a game changer.
Platforms like Elicit.com and ResearchRabbit.ai can analyze massive amounts of information in a fraction of the time it would take a human. It's like having a super-powered research assistant that can sift through mountains of papers and highlight the most relevant findings.
So AI can help streamline the process and make research more efficient. But what about the human element?
That's crucial. AI is a tool, and like any tool, it's only as good as the person using it. We still need researchers to ask the right questions, critically evaluate the information, and make sure the AI is being used ethically and responsibly.
It's like having a fancy new kitchen gadget.
Uh-huh.
It might be able to chop vegetables faster than you can say Mahalanobis's distance, but you still need a chef to turn those chopped veggies into a delicious meal.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting about the future of research. We have these incredible tools at our disposal, but it's the human element, the curiosity, the creativity, the desire to understand that will always be at the heart of discovery.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of research methods, what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
The next time you come across a research finding, whether it's a headline in your newsfeed or a statistic cited in a conversation, take a moment to think about the process behind it. Who conducted the research?
Right.
How did they gather their data? What methods did they use to analyze it?
Asking those questions can help you become a more informed and critical consumer of information. And who knows, it might even spark your own curiosity to explore the world with a researcher's mindset.